volleyball, which was the Canadian champion in 2011. St. Elizabeth de Warwick is now the place to be on Fridays during the summer when their cheese of the day is served, and it draws visitors from across Quebec. I'm very proud to commend the Morin family and their employees who are ambassadors of our region and of Quebec, and they offer delicious cheeses. Thank you.
Member for Prince Albert.
Mr. Speaker, the NDP and Liberals can't seem to see a tax without wanting to raise it. Their high tax agendas would hurt hardworking families. On this side of the House, we believe in helping families. The enhanced UCCB, for example, will put almost $2,000 back in the pockets of parents with kids under 6. It will put $720 back in the pockets of parents with kids between the ages of 6 and 17. With under 3 days to go before the deadline to get your enhanced child care benefit payment in July, our government is urging the hundreds of thousands of families who haven't yet signed up to sign up on www.canada.ca/tax savings. In Saskatchewan, there's an estimated 10,200 families that are not yet registered. That's an estimated 18,700 children who may not get the PM's enhanced benefit in July. Mr. Speaker, there's almost 500 families in Prince Albert alone. While the NDP and Liberals are focused on raising taxes, we're working hard to ensure that every mom and dad keeps more of their hard-earned money back in their pockets.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby, New Westminster.
Mr. Speaker, I proudly rise today to honour a very special group, the Royal City Musical Theatre Company in the City of New Westminster, which helped celebrate the 65th anniversary of our venerable Massey Theatre with a lavish production of a classic masterpiece, My Fair Lady. Mr. Speaker, this company is unique and consists primarily of volunteer talent engaged in enriching our lives with spectacular success. I saw this production with my family, and My Fair Lady was visually stunning. Colorful costumes, opulent sets, talented players and singers, and a 22-piece orchestra that truly brought the fantastic score to life. It was a special experience combining visual arts with singing, dancing, acting, and musicianship. The quality and the professionalism of the productions of the Royal City Musical Theatre Company have earned this group the respect of musical theatre goers from all over British Columbia. Bravo! A well-earned ovation to the Royal City Musical Theatre Company for their artistic excellence, for their hard work, and for their magic, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Lethbridge.
Mr. Speaker, last week we fulfilled our commitment to balance the budget and to introduce income splitting for families with kids. I polled my constituents, and the vast majority support income splitting because it's fair and it's pro-family, and it acknowledges the real value stay-home parents provide their families and society in general. Don't be fooled by the opponents who say it will only help the rich. They just want to keep taking your money. I grew up in a family of 14 kids. My dad was a school teacher, and my mom was a stay-home mom, and income splitting would have definitely helped my parents. In fact, it would have helped most families in my small town, and none of us were rich. It won't solve every problem in the universe, and nobody said it would, but income splitting will help most two-parent homes. Unless you're in the same tax bracket as your spouse, or your family doesn't pay taxes at all, you're going to benefit from income splitting. Single parents will benefit from the other measures in our family tax program. I'm proud to keep this election promise as an important measure to bring justice and fairness to all families.
The Honourable Member for Random Buren, St. George's.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize Katarina Roxon, an exceptional athlete from Kiffins and Random Buren, St. George's. Since taking up para swimming, Katarina has built an impressive resume and continues to set personal bests as she breaks both Canadian and world records. In early March, she set 2 world and 3 national records at the East Coast Swimming Championships in Mount Pearl, which she followed up with 2 gold medals, 2 silver and 1 bronze at the Can-Am International Swimming Championships in Toronto. She gained a spot on the teams that will be representing Canada at the IPC World Swimming Championships being held in Glasgow, Scotland, and the Pan Am Games in Toronto. Katarina is a disciplined athlete and has her sights set on excelling at those 2 prestigious events. Given her determination, it is not surprising that she is a world-class swimmer. Katarina gives back to her sport, coaching the Aqua Aces Swim Club in Stephenville and preparing yet another generation of swimmers to reach their potential. I ask members to join me in congratulating Katarina Roxon on her remarkable achievements in the sport of para-swimming and wishing her continued success.
The Honourable Member for Sault Ste. Marie.
Mr. Speaker, today I would like to recognize the retirement of two significant role models who have served the city of Sault Ste. Marie, Mr. Joe Fratesi, the outgoing CAO, and Mr. Bill Freiberger, outgoing Commissioner of Finance and Treasurer. Joe served as City Councillor for Ward 6 for 3 terms, from 1976 to 1982. He has also worked as the longest-serving mayor, 1985 to 1996, and as the city's longest-serving CAO since 1996. Joe is someone I have worked alongside in my capacity as a City Councillor and in my role as an MP. It has been a privilege. Under Bill's watch, over 30 years in the Finance Department, the Sault City services have been among the highest and taxes among the lowest in Northern Ontario. For that, I am grateful. Gentlemen, cheers to your retirement, and thank you both for your great advice and service throughout the years.
Very good.
The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Mr. Speaker, by presenting a budget geared to the wealthy few, the Conservative government missed a perfect opportunity to show some compassion to serious ill EI recipients. People who have had to stop working in order to receive care, such as Josiane Monette. This Rivière-du-Nord resident, stricken with cancer, is also fighting for change to the EI system. After having paid into the system all her life, she has been cut off after only 15 weeks of sick leave benefits. This single mother has saved for her retirement, and therefore she is not entitled to social assistance. The government helps the richest few instead of helping ill people who are fighting for their lives. I wish Ms. Monette and everyone who is struggling with cancer, they should know that the NDP are at their side. And we will help them even more in October, and we will show more compassion for them. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Okanagan-Shuswap. Mr. Speaker, although I will not be a candidate in the 2015 election, I feel a sense of accomplishment as I prepare to leave this place. It has been an honour to be a small part of a government that has provided new direction for Canadians. Moving from the past Liberal government focused on I'm entitled to my entitlements to our government focused on taxpayers and accountability. Whereas the Liberals focus on minority interest groups, our government has focused on Canadian families and seniors. Our justice system is focused on victims of crime, not only the offenders. Our government has supported provinces and expanded health, education and social transfers, not cutting the transfers as the Liberal government did to balance the budget. Our government's economic action plan providing jobs, growth and prosperity for Canadians and a balanced budget, in contrast with the Liberals that have no plan for Canada's economy, just more taxes and more programs. Our budgets have invested in infrastructure by partnering with communities and provinces. Yes, Mr. Speaker, I have the comfort in leaving this place knowing that I have had a small part in making a difference for Canadians and the constituents of Okanagan-Shuswap.
Good job, Colin. The Honourable Member for Scarborough Centre.
On March 28th, I had the opportunity to join the Armenian Family Support Services at the Habitat for Humanity construction site in my riding of Scarborough Centre. To commemorate the 100-year anniversary of the Armenian genocide, the Family Support Services were holding a faith build to both honour the victims and to give back to the community. They were doing this by challenging 100 youth to don hard hats and pick up hammers at the construction site. On this day, I also had the great honour to meet Evgeny Yerganyan Kokorian, a survivor of the Armenian genocide. I had the opportunity to hear her story and to celebrate her 100th birthday. On closing, Mr. Speaker, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Holy Trinity Armenian Church, the Armenian Family Support Services, and Habitat for Humanity for all of the good work they do in our communities.
Honourable Member for Berthier-Maskinongé. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to take the time to emphasize a great historical moment in my riding. In 1665, the Carignan Regiment landed and founded the city of Louisville. In fact, Louisville is in the very heart of my riding of Berthier-Maskinongé, and this year it is writing a very important chapter in our history by celebrating its 350th anniversary, which makes it one of the oldest cities in Quebec. Throughout the year, a number of activities and festivities will be offered to the people in my riding and across Quebec in order to honor the rich history of Louisville. For example, from April 30th to May 2nd, the play Once Upon a Time in 1952 will be presented by 7 actors from the region. This play will be one of the countless activities honoring the seminal moments of this town. I would like to commend the organizers, including the committee president, Doris Scott, the numerous volunteers and partners of this initiative for the city of Louisville. You make a difference in our region and its visibility across Quebec. Happy anniversary, Louisville.
North Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The liberation of the Netherlands was an important part of the Allied effort to free the people of Europe from tyranny and oppression, of which Canada played a crucial role. Our government recognizes the importance of commemorating the 70th anniversary of the liberation of the Netherlands and will be sending an all-party delegation led by the Minister of Veterans Affairs. Over 60 veterans who helped liberate the Netherlands will be participating. Unfortunately, one veteran, Mr. Art Boone, who was invited as a guest of the Dutch government, is unable to be accompanied by his son, a teacher. This is because the Avon Maitland School Board has refused Rick Boone's request for unpaid leave to travel with and provide care for his father. This is absolutely shameful, Mr. Speaker, and I once again call upon the school board to reverse this decision and do the right thing. Thank you very much.
Honourable member for Saint-Bruno-Saint-Hubert. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Monday, a report from UN Women was published. This report shows that the governments have responsibilities to take for genuine gender equality. Mr. Speaker, I will quote a passage from this report. The divisions between economic and social policy are artificial. Connecting the two is key to the realization of rights. Unfortunately, the past years have shown that the Conservatives are not listening to the experts. When we talk about gender equality, the environment, the economy, I always observe the same thing. Since 2006, Canada is no longer governed by knowledge, expertise, or science. In fact, our country has been abandoned to the dishonest and reckless ideology of the Conservatives. Mr. Speaker, Canadians have had enough, and in October, they will vote accordingly. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Lotbinière-Chaudière. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Leader of the Opposition called our tax cuts giveaways. On this side of the House, we will make no apologies for keeping more money in the pockets of Canadians. That is why we're helping middle-class Canadian families through our new family tax cut and enhanced universal child care benefit. These measures will benefit 100% of families with children, leaving every family with more money in their pockets. The NDP and Liberals have something in common. They both think that taxpayer money is theirs. The NDP and Liberals would take this money from Canadians and spend it on big government bureaucracy. Mr. Speaker, it must be said, the NDP members and the Liberal members don't care about defending the interests of Canadian and Quebec families, and the voters will remember that. Only a Conservative government allows Canadians to keep more money in their pockets. The Honourable Member for Saint-Laurent-Cartierville.
Today marks International Dance Day, and thus let us express, show and tangibly demonstrate our support for the dancers, choreographers and producers. On the world stages, they selflessly and spectacularly remind us that dance is a wonderful activity, an incredible art that, as legislators, we need to encourage and support. What else than dance better connects human beings with their own bodies and souls, their own emotions and energy, and, in some ways, with the whole universe. Et nous-mêmes, nous tous.
And all of us here are rehearsing for the upcoming election performance. And we know that being a politician is like dancing on eggshells. One faux pas, one poorly executed pirouette, and we end up with scrambled eggs. So let us salute all dancers and express both our support and admiration for them.
Mr. Speaker, let us dance today, and for that matter, every day.
The Honourable Member for Northumberland, Quinte West.
Mr. Speaker, our Conservative government has always stood up for the protection of Canadians. We have taken strong action to ensure that law enforcement have the tools they need to do their jobs. This includes passing over 30 new tough-on-crime laws and making record investments in crime prevention and law enforcement. Interestingly, new Liberal candidate Bill Blair supported our Conservative government's Safe Streets and Communities Act, saying, and I quote, "This new legislation responds to today's needs and will allow police to improve their ability to protect the communities we serve," unquote. This is in stark contrast to the Liberal leader who voted against this bill and in fact went so far as to say he would repeal all minimum prison sentences, while Bill Blair and the Liberal leader contemplate which dangerous criminals belong in jail and for how long. Mr. Speaker, our Conservative government will continue taking strong action to protect our fellow Canadians.
The honourable member for Welling.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Auditor General delivered another scathing report. First Nations are being forced to seek health care from substandard clinics with undertrained staff. There has been mismanagement at the Office of the Canadian Forces Ombudsman. Conservatives are not even evaluating the impact of tax giveaways to the wealthy. Yet year after year, these audits reveal the same sort of thing. Despite all their rhetoric and self-promotion, when it comes to actually governing the country, keeping Canadians safe, managing the finances, Conservatives are just incompetent. But it's not just their incompetence, Mr. Speaker. What's worse, no minister ever takes responsibility for that incompetence. Canadians don't expect government to be perfect, but they expect a government that will take responsibility for its mistakes. And in a few months, Mr. Speaker, when Canadians turf these Conservatives for a principled new democratic government, that's what they're going to get.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today because I have some good news for hard-working families in the riding of Miramichi. Our Conservative government is reducing taxes on middle-class families. As we announced in the balanced budget tabled by Finance Minister last week, our government has expanded and extended the universal child care benefit to provide more money to 100% of families with children. Parents will receive almost $2,000 per year for every child under the age of 6 and $720 per year for every child 6 to 17, regardless of their income or the form of child care they choose. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, there are still nearly 200,000 Canadian families who are eligible to receive this benefit from our Conservative government but have not signed up. I strongly encourage all families in Miramichi to go to canada.ca/tax savings to ensure that they receive all the money they deserve.
I agree. Oral questions, questions orales. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Constitution of Canada is clear, very lucid, very precise on Senate appointments. A senator shall be resident in the province for which they are appointed. Period. What did the Prime Minister do when Mike Duffy told him that he was not a resident of PEI but of Ontario? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
It's really a shame that the NDP are trying to make a victim out of Mike Duffy right now, Mr. Speaker. Look, Mr. Speaker, this government will continue to provide every possible assistance to the Crown in its case against Mr. Duffy, but it's Mr. Duffy's actions that are in front of the court, Mr. Speaker. And as you know, of course, it would be inappropriate for me to comment on evidence before the court.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Just did comment on the evidence before the court because he just told us that the government is helping in the Mike Duffy trial with evidence before the court. But why isn't the government helping put evidence before the court in the case of Carolyn Stewart-Olson? Oh, I know, because she was never brought before the court because she's still very close to the Conservatives. It's only when you fall out that you get into trouble. Now, here's the government's response. They actually put out a memo saying that anyone who owned property in a province could say that they were a resident of that province even if they didn't actually live there. That's the government. Why did they tell senators they could lie about where they live?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
as I said, the constitutional practice on this has been clear for almost 150 years. But speaking about misrepresenting the truth, Mr. Speaker, how about the NDP, who have 68 members of Parliament, who, contrary to the rules of this House, paid for partisan political offices in Montreal, Mr. Speaker. In fact, the Leader of the Opposition himself owes the Canadian taxpayer more than $400,000. He refuses to pay that money back. He broke the rules. He and the 67 other members of his party ought to pay that money back to taxpayers.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Dean Del Maestro, real court. Conservatives and Liberals, kangaroo court.
Yeah.
The government wastes $100 million of taxpayers' money every single year to pay senators' salaries and expenses. $100 million bucks. Canadians don't know how much of that is being plundered by the likes of Mike Duffy and Mac Harb, and the government is doing everything it can to make sure we never find out. Conservatives are setting up yet another kangaroo court, this time to protect senators who charged fraudulent expenses. If they have nothing to hide, why are they covering it up?
Obviously, Mr. Speaker, I would completely reject the premise of that question, but it's actually the NDP who are in front of the courts, Mr. Speaker. They're in front of the courts because 68 of their members illegally used the resources of this House of Commons, Mr. Speaker, of taxpayers, Mr. Speaker, for illegal offices in Montreal. They owe $2.7 million to the taxpayers of Canada, Mr. Speaker. The Leader of the Opposition owes some $400,000, and 67 other of his members owe the rest of that money, Mr. Speaker. I would encourage him to do the right thing for taxpayers, and pay the money back.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we'll actually know the seriousness of that the day that that member has the courage to go stand out there and repeat out there what he just said here. He'll quit. He'll learn the difference between a real court and a kangaroo court. Dans leur publicité cette année.
In their ads this year, the average wage of a Canadian woman in Canada would have dropped by $40,000 to get in line with the way that they do budget. So can they explain to us how this year the typical average woman in their analysis earns $40,000 a year less than last year? Minister of State.
Speaker, make no mistake about this. This government has brought forward a budget that is a low-tax budget that will build this economy and create jobs. Mr. Speaker, the $42,000 that the member talks about, that member wants to take that money, they want to take all measures that individual makes because they believe that those are the wealthy of Canada. Half of all tax-free savings accounts, Mr. Speaker, are those who earn under $42,000. And, Mr. Speaker, they believe they're the Canadian wealthy. They want to tax high-income Canadians. We won't let it happen.
Order. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The only time that member's ever been right was last week when he stood in this House and screamed, "Shame on the government!" Government's failures on tax policy show incompetence, but their failures on First Nations health care show contempt and neglect. First Nations communities in Ontario and Manitoba lack basic health services from their federal government. No guaranteed access to clinical care. Major health and safety problems at the nursing stations. Only 1 out of 45 nurses evaluated had been given proper training courses. This is the responsibility of the federal government. Why such neglect for First Nations?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to report that Health Canada is well on their way to addressing all of the issues that the Auditor General has raised. Our number one priority is making sure Aboriginals on First Nations have access to healthcare providers. So we are making sure that we have nurses that are on reserve. We're also encouraging more practitioners, whether they be nurses or doctors, to work on First Nations. So we're giving them Canada loans, student loan forgiveness. We also have a new recruitment and retention strategy that's been very successful. We have over 250 applications, and Mr. Speaker, no matter what, if anyone is sick, we will, of course, use our emergency medical.
Order. I just want to let other members know that we moved on. Some members seem to be carrying on conversations from the previous line of questioning. If they need to do so, they can exit the chamber to do that, but not while other members have the floor. The honourable member for Beausejour.
Mr. Speaker, even Mike Duffy himself was so concerned that he did not meet the constitutional requirements to sit as a senator for Prince Edward Island that he asked the Prime Minister if he could represent Ontario. That's logical, since Mr. Duffy had lived in Ottawa for 40 years. Is the Prime Minister so disconnected from reality that he thought he could ignore the Constitution and appoint Mike Duffy for Prince Edward Island, and then pretend to be surprised to learn that the senator had lived in Ottawa for 40 years? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Speaker, look, the NDP and the Liberals are trying to make a victim out of Mike Duffy, Mr. Speaker. Now, we know why they're doing this. The NDP, of course, have to answer for the fact that 68 of their members illegally used the resources of this House, pretending that they were hiring people in their Ottawa offices, but sending them to Montreal against the rules of this House. The Liberals and the NDP together account for almost $45 million in illegal House of Commons taxpayers' resources, Mr. Speaker. They promised to pay it back. They never did. They're in front of the courts. Both of them together want to create a coalition. My gosh, Mr.
The honourable member for Beausejour.
Mr. Speaker, even Mike Duffy himself was so concerned about not meeting the constitutional residency requirements to be a senator from Prince Edward Island that he asked the Prime Minister to appoint him from Ontario. Makes sense, since Mr. Duffy's lived in Ottawa for over 40 years. But is the Prime Minister so out of touch that he thought he could bypass the Constitution, appoint Mike Duffy from Prince Edward Island, just for the chance to get up and feign indignation that he recently discovered that Mike Duffy has lived in Ottawa for 40 years?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Speaker, as I say, the constitutional practice on this has been clear for almost 150 years, Mr. Speaker. But at the same time, while we were fighting very hard in order to bring accountability to the Senate, it was the NDP and the Liberals who were trying to make victims out of these people. Disgraced former Liberal Senator Mac Harb, who represented Ottawa with that member of Parliament in this House before becoming a senator, is accused of taking $240,000 of taxpayers' resources, Mr. Speaker. They have to answer for that. Of course, we can't forget the senator from Puerto Vallarta who was appointed by the Prime Minister Trudeau, Mr. Speaker. Can you imagine the coalition that we would have? That pretend leader, a deputy prime minister who's the leader of the opposition.
The honourable member for King's Hands.
Mr. Speaker, exams are almost done and students are struggling to find summer work. The Conservatives think that promoting themselves through government advertising is actually more important than helping young people find summer jobs. The Conservatives have slashed the number of positions created by the Canada Summer Jobs program by more than half. Meanwhile, the cost of just one ad during the NHL playoffs could help pay for 30 summer jobs. When will the Conservatives stop wasting tax dollars on these ads and start helping more students find summer work?
That's right. The Honourable Minister of Employment.
Mr. Speaker, we are creating jobs through tax cuts, training, and trade, and we are advertising these benefits to Canadian families and Canadian youth. In fact, Nina Whitmer learned about the grants that we're providing for apprentices. She always wanted to be a stonemason, and with that grant, she was able to get accredited with her Red Seal. She's now won the National Skills Competition, is graduating debt-free, and is on her way to starting her very own masonry business. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals don't want Nina and others to know about the apprenticeship grant because the Liberals would take it away.
The honourable member for Timmins, James Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister has been very skittish about clarifying whether or not Mike Duffy acted as a conduit between Enbridge and his office. Yeah. We know that both the Prime Minister and his Chief of Staff were in direct communications with Duffy about Enbridge, and Enbridge is now saying that they thought these exchanges with Duffy were inappropriate, and so they warned the Prime Minister's office. So will the Prime Minister confirm whether or not Enbridge did speak to him and whether or not he took any steps to tell Duffy that this supposed case of reverse coerced lobbying was inappropriate. What steps did the Prime Minister take?
Very good. Obviously, Mr. Speaker, I reject most of that question. But look, these are matters that are before the court. I'm not going to comment on evidence that's before the court. But, Mr. Speaker, as you know, I've been accused of being too partisan. But last night, when I got home to my condominium here, my apartment in Ottawa Centre, how excited I was to get the 2015 tax tips for families from my Member of Parliament here in Ottawa. Chock full of 14 pages of tax savings for the people of Canada, thanks to this government. I want to thank the NDP Member of Parliament for Ottawa Centre for highlighting all of these great tax things that we have done on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker. And I hope you'll continue to vote for them in the next budget. Congratulations.
Order. It's such a nice moment. Let's not spoil it. Honourable Member for Timmins James Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My colleague might believe that the House of Commons is a place to act out farce. We believe it's a place to answer the questions of the Canadian people. Here's the thing, Mr. Speaker. If Enbridge did indeed...
Order. The Honourable Member for Timmins James Bay has the floor. Members need to come to order so we can hear the question. The Honourable Member for Timmins James Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Because here's the thing. If Enbridge did indeed warn the Prime Minister, then why was the Prime Minister asking Mike Duffy for a briefing on Enbridge on February 17th, 2012? And 3 days later, when Duffy sent Nigel Wright a note that also was sent to Enbridge executives, what was in that note? And it was the Prime Minister. Why was he still speaking with Duffy about Enbridge on April 4th, 2012, if these negotiations had indeed been red flagged with his office as inappropriate?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
I completely reject that question. And as I said, we're not going to comment on matter before the courts. It's Mr. Duffy's actions that are before the court, Mr. Speaker. But I don't think it's a farce to talk about the tax cuts that this government has brought in, highlighting, as the member for Ottawa Centre did. He highlighted things like the apprentice tax credit, income splitting, Mr. Speaker, the universal child care benefit. It was 14 pages of tax cuts that this government had brought in that he was taking credit for. Now, unfortunately, the member for Ottawa Centre voted against all of those, but good news for the people of Ottawa Centre. In a few days, that 14-page guide is going to be 16, 17, and 18 pages of even more tax savings.
The Honourable Member for La Pointe de Lille. The Prime Minister's silence on these meetings is really troubling. The PM's Chief of Staff has connections to Enbridge. Mr. Duffy was in contact with Enbridge, and the Prime Minister met with Mr. Duffy on the subject of Enbridge. But on their side, it's radio silence, as if nothing happened. Does the Prime Minister and his team have something to hide on the role of his staff and the Senator with Enbridge? The Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've already answered that question, but there's another question, Mr. Speaker. Why has this member not used more than $25,000 against the rules of this House for work in her ridings?
Owes Canadian taxpayers almost $30,000 because, as opposed to supporting her own constituency with the resources provided to it, she funneled money to an illegal office in Montreal, and she ought to pay it back.
Member for La Pointe de Lille. The government has to defend the interests of all Canadians, not only those of a big oil company. Enbridge claims that at no time did it ask the Senator to advance its interests with the federal government. But Duffy, on the other hand, found these meetings significant enough to send a note to the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff on February 20th, 2012. Did the Prime Minister receive this note? And what was the subject of the meeting he had with Mr. Duffy on the 4th of April, 2012? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
I'm not going to comment on matters before the court. It's Mr. Duffy's actions that are before the court now, Mr. Speaker.
But at the same time, the member for Quebec, for example, used up to $30,000 against the rules of this House, Mr. Speaker.
Parliament, the NDP member of Parliament for Quebec, redirected resources for her riding from Quebec to an illegal office in Montreal. She was part of 68 members of the NDP caucus who did that, breaking the rules, taking money meant for their residents, meant for their constituents, and funneling it to an illegal office. They ought to pay it back.
The honourable member for St. John's East.
Speaker, there have been serious allegations of sexual misconduct and assault in the ministry for some time, and a failure to properly address complaints. The Chief of Defence Staff initiated an investigation last year after horrible incidents involving sexual assault were revealed in major media reports. And the Minister of National Defence confirmed that the report of Madame Deschamps will be released tomorrow, and if not, when? And will it be made public in its entirety?
The Honourable Prime Secretary of the Ministry of Defence.
Well, Mr. Speaker, no one who has chosen to serve Canada as a member of our armed forces should be subjected to this kind of disgusting and unacceptable behaviour. As we've already said, allegations of sexual harassment in the armed forces are truly disturbing. And that's why the Chief of Defence Staff ordered an external, independent review into how the Canadian Armed Forces deals with sexual misconduct and sexual harassment. He's also directed the establishment of the Canadian Armed Forces Strategic Response Team on sexual misconduct to develop a detailed action plan to address the report's recommendations. This action plan, along with the report, will be released soon.
The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Yesterday, the Auditor General revealed serious problems in the Office of the Ombudsman, the only place that the people in the armed forces can turn to. There was a horrible series of incidents of sexual assault that were revealed by the media. It is of paramount importance to take this seriously. Can the Minister of National Defence confirm that the report will be published tomorrow and that necessary changes will be made?
As I already said, Mr. Speaker, the report and the action plan will be released soon. As to the Auditor General's report, National Defence accepts all the recommendations from the Auditor General's investigation. The lack of accountability for taxpayers' dollars was unacceptable. Steps have already been taken by the Department of National Defence and the Office of the Ombudsman to strengthen accountability. Specific measures including a new agreement to better manage employees and processes for better financial accountability.
The Honourable Member for Algoma, Manitoulin, Kapuskasing.
Once again, no answer, Mr. Speaker. Another case that is paying the price of the incompetence of the Conservatives is that of Aboriginal healthcare services. As we're learning from the Auditor General, this care leaves a lot to be desired for remote communities in Manitoba and Ontario. Out of all of the Health Canada nursing positions, only one person completed the 5 mandatory Health Canada training centres, 1 out of 45. Why are the Conservatives neglecting the remote communities of Northern Ontario and Manitoba? Honourable Minister of Health.
Speaker, Health Canada supports 734 Aboriginal health facilities across the country, including investments of $30 million annually to make sure that those are maintained, and they've just built another 5 facilities across the country. But most importantly, Mr. Speaker, any Aboriginal Canadian living on First Nations, even if it's for a routine appointment, has access at all times to emergency transportation, and that is available to anyone at all times, should there be any concerns on the First Nations. But, Mr. Speaker, one of the biggest issues is recruitment and retention. We have launched a recruitment and retention campaign for more nurses, and it's going well.
Mr. Speaker, every year the Conservatives spend billions of dollars in order to offer tax credits and loopholes to the wealthy. This government's tax expenditures have not stopped multiplying for 10 years, and the Auditor General is concerned that the Conservatives are refusing to tell us how much all of these gifts are costing and who's benefiting from them. Will the Conservatives make the Finance Department's secret report public to shed light on these tax loopholes?
Honourable Minister of State for Finance.
Mr. Speaker, our government believes in keeping taxes low, but we also believe in ensuring all corporations and Canadians pay their fair share of tax. That's why since 2006, we've aggressively moved to close over 85 tax loopholes. The loopholes we're closing amount to billions of dollars annually. That means lower taxes for all Canadians, not just a select few.
The honourable member for Skeena-Boakley Valley.
The Conservatives have gone from hiding their finance minister, hiding the facts of their budget. Give them credit, Speaker. Conservatives have been focused like a laser on giving away billions to the wealthy and the well-connected. We now learn from the Auditor General himself that Conservatives haven't even bothered to count all the money going out the door. Conservatives didn't have the decency to track all the money or whether any of their programs were actually working. They must be borrowing the accounting manual from the Senate over there. They say good news sells itself, Mr. Speaker. So is that why Conservatives are having to spend millions more selling their bad budget to Canadians?
Yeah. The Honourable Minister of Employment.
Mr. Speaker, they say one thing here, but exactly the opposite in their writings. They call our tax breaks giveaways when they're on Parliament Hill, but the NDP member for Ottawa Centre actually takes credit for them. In his tax guide, here he has the children's fitness tax credit, which he voted against. Here he has pension splitting for seniors, Mr. Speaker. Here he has the pension amount increase. These are not giveaways, Mr. Speaker. As the NDP member for Ottawa Centre understands, these are tax cuts. If only they would actually vote in favour of them when they come back to the House of Commons, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Bourassa. Mr. Speaker, our young people are ending their school year and they're already concerned that they won't have a job this summer. Rather than helping our students to find jobs, the Conservatives prefer wasting taxpayers' money on partisan ads. Moreover, they have cut most of the jobs from the Canada Summer Jobs program. Mr. Speaker, cutting one single ad during the NHL playoffs would have allowed for 30 young people to get a job this summer. Why are the Conservatives continuing to waste taxpayers' money on partisan advertising rather than helping our young people? The Honourable Minister of Employment. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals used ads during the sponsorship scandal in order to give money to their Liberal friends. We are using ads in order to inform Canadians about tax decreases and other benefits. Mr. Speaker, we present these ads to explain the cuts to families, which will save them $2,000. And the increase in the child tax benefit will provide $2,000 for every child under the age of 6 and $720 for every child between the ages of 6 and 17. Mr. Speaker, we are giving the money directly to taxpayers by reducing their taxes.
Mr. Speaker, Conservatives spent $750 million on self-promotional advertising while clawing back more than $900 million from Environment Canada. Apparently, self-promotion is more important than species at risk, or more important than toxic spills in Vancouver, or more important than that elephant in the room, climate change. Will this government advertise its $12 million cut to species at risk? Will it advertise its $188 million cut from climate change? Mr. Speaker, is it not ironic and tragic that Environment Canada funds are being used to bankroll Conservative Party advertising?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, no federal government has done more for the environment than this government. In the 2015 budget, the budget is reinvesting fundings for federal contaminated sites, the public transit, meteorological navigational warning for the Arctic, the chemicals management plan. The president of the Canadian Consumer Specialty Product Association said, I quote, "We see the renewal of the plans as a continuation of Canada's world-leading initiatives. And what would the Liberals do, Mr. Speaker? They would increase taxes on Canadians and on consumers and middle-class families. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Winnipeg North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Budgets are about priorities. Tragically, about 25 police and firefighters die in the line of duty on average every year. A compensation package for these heroes, Mr. Speaker, would be less than half of what this government is spending on bogus, crappy, self-partisan ads, Mr. Speaker. $7 million is what we're talking about. My question to the Prime Minister is, how does he justify wasting $14 million tax dollars, Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, of course, we will not take any lessons from the third party on support for our police and first responders across this country. In fact, Mr. Speaker, it was the Liberal Party that closed down the RCMP training depot when they were in power because they refused to pay for new recruits. In contrast to that, Mr. Speaker, we are supporting law enforcement and security agencies across this country by giving them the tools that they need to actually keep Canadians safe, including investments of $300 million in Budget 2015.
The Honourable Member for Alfred Pellant. The Auditor General tells us only 38% of departments and agencies have submitted a security plan. These plans are required under national security legislation enacted by the Conservatives in 2009. 38% is pretty mediocre by itself, but it's even worse when you consider that the plans were supposed to have been submitted 2 years ago. Before passing even more security legislation that violates Canadians' freedoms, could the government have the decency to put an end to its own mismanagement when it comes to security plans?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And again, the opposition party, the NDP, is so off base with these types of questions. They have not supported a single measure that this government has brought forward to keep Canadians safe. In fact, just recently, in committee, we had C-51, the anti-terrorism legislation. It is truly unfortunate that such misinformation, either by intentional reasons or because of a pure lack of understanding on behalf of the official opposition, has pushed such bad information about that bill, when at the very heart of this bill, C-51, is the national security of this country and the protection of all Canadians.
The Honourable Member Forrest
Well, Mr. Speaker, C-51 is so detrimental to our rights and freedoms that thousands of Canadians have come out to protest against this one piece of legislation. Now, Stephen Tuke, former Dean of Law at McGill, former UBC President, and currently the Director of the Monk School of Global Affairs, has called Bill C-51, and I quote, "so badly drafted, so expansive in scope, and so open to abuse that one must wonder how a responsible political leadership could bring it forward." Hear, hear. Hear, hear. Mr. Speaker, will the Minister of Public Safety now listen to the chorus of Canadians who are speaking out against Bill C-51 and withdraw this bill immediately? Hear, hear.
Mr. Speaker, the official opposition has not supported a single measure to keep Canadians safe. In fact, it was quite apparent when I talk about the misinformation that's been pushed out by the NDP, whether it was intentional or a lack of understanding. It was clear it's probably the latter, because in committee and clause by clause, the very first amendment that member put forward, the officials that were there had to explain it to him that he was incorrect. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we are going to stand up for the security of this country and the safety of all Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Surrey North.
Mr. Speaker, the violence in Surrey has reached crisis level. Another shooting last night. This is the 25th shooting in the last 8 weeks. People in my community are worried for their safety and the safety of their neighbours. Meanwhile, the Conservative 2015 budget does not even mention the word crime prevention, gangs, or Surrey for that matter, Mr. Speaker. And Conservative cuts have left the RCMP unable to manage crime databases and forensic services. Mr. Speaker, will the Conservatives stop making excuses and make funds available protecting people in my community?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Perhaps I'd like to point out to that member that, in fact, we have actually invested $2.8 million to crime prevention in Surrey since 2006. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, Canadians will not tolerate being held hostage in their own communities by thugs and criminals who are members of street gangs. Our government has been clear that this sort of illegal activity is completely unacceptable, and that is why we have passed more than 30 tough-on-crime bills, including harsh mandatory prison sentences for those involved in drive-by.
The honourable member for Newton North Delta.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That kind of response gives no comfort to the citizens of Surrey. Empty words are simply not good enough. The Conservatives are abandoning our community in the middle of a crisis. Lives are at risk. People deserve to be safe from violence. They need real action, not excuses from that minister. I have stood in this House and called for more RCMP to deal with the violence in Surrey. The Mayor of Surrey is asking the federal government to approve 100 more RCMP. Will they commit now to approve this without delay?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I certainly have good news for that member. Budget 2015 includes new funding for our security agencies across the country, including the RCMP, $300 million, Mr. Speaker. I'd also just like to reiterate that it is this government that has passed more than 30 tough-on-crime bills to keep Canadians safe, including in that member's riding. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, we recognize that crime prevention is necessary to keep Canadians safe, and that's why in Surrey, BC, since 2006, we have provided $2.8 million for crime prevention.
Honourable member for Etobicoke Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our government recognizes the importance of commemorating the 70th anniversary of the liberation of the Netherlands. Unfortunately, one veteran who was invited as a guest of the Dutch government is unable to be accompanied by his son because the Avon Maitland School Board his son works for has refused his request for unpaid leave. Wow. Can the Minister please update this House on this specific case? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs.
That member who served himself in uniform. I spoke, Mr. Speaker, with Art Boone this week, an inspiring 90-year-old veteran who wants to return with his comrades to the Netherlands, a country that Canadians liberated 70 years ago. I'm truly hopeful that the school board, who I also spoke with this week, will look at this issue and try and find an outcome to let Mr. Boone go on this excursion with his comrades and with his son.
The honourable member for Laurier St. Marie. Mr. Speaker, Nepal is going through a terrible tragedy, and it's the duty of our government to do everything in its power under the circumstances to provide help and protection to Canadian nationals. It's incredibly sad today to hear the stories of Canadians who feel abandoned by their own government. Can the Minister tell us what he plans to do to rescue all Canadians stuck in Nepal as quickly as possible?
Speaker, first of all, this is a tragedy, and we join the rest of the world in mourning the tragic loss of life that has occurred in Nepal. We have deployed additional consular staff to help deal with this crisis. We have sent hundreds of emergency travel documents. A Canadian consular service point has been established, and, Mr. Speaker, the first C-17 plane has left for New Delhi with evacuated Canadians.
The member for Hamilton East Stony Creek.
Well, Mr. Speaker, in the midst of this tragedy, there are many, oh so many Canadian families who are desperately worried about their loved ones, and many have expressed frustration with the response of the Canadian government. These families are saying they're having difficulty getting clear answers from the Department of Foreign Affairs, and unlike other countries, Canadian evacuees are being told they'll have to find their own way home from New Delhi. Canadians need answers as to how this government is going to address these concerns.
Mr. Speaker, we have deployed additional staff to assist the people dealing with the crisis. In fact, 11 additional staff are already there in Kathmandu, while another 4 just arrived today on the RCF C-17 Globemaster, and we have evacuated Canadians. The first C-17 has just left for New Delhi, and we are pleased to be of assistance, and I commend the Canadian consular officials and everyone else involved that have helped make this happen.
The honourable member for Parkdale High Park.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians depend on first responders to keep us safe, and we owe them our full support in return. Hear, hear. But across the country, firefighters are experiencing an increase in post-traumatic stress disorder, and they're not being given the resources they need to deal with it. We've also seen the Liberals and the Conservatives vote against the NDP bill that would have protected volunteer firefighters while they did their job of protecting Canadians. So why is this government failing our firefighters?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The member knows full well that the firefighters across this country do not fall under the jurisdiction of federal governance. They are municipal, provincial, and so on. So I appreciate that question, but I'd also like to point out, Mr. Speaker, that I'm actually married to a firefighter. And I can tell you right now that I certainly thank all firefighters across this country, especially my husband, who works in the City of Toronto, for keeping Torontonians safe. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Quebec City. Under the Conservatives, Canadians are working harder and harder just to keep their heads above water. Despite record profits in the billions of dollars, Canadian banks are now going to charge clients to pay mortgage payments. And after introducing pay-to-pay practices, now they're going to allow their clients the privilege of paying a fee to make mortgage payments. The Conservatives have declined to stop the banks, and Canadians are footing the bill. Will the Conservatives give in again to their banker friends, or will they finally stand up for the middle class?
The only party in this House that has consistently stood up for the consumers. Unlike the opposition that would raise taxes on middle-class consumers, we've lowered taxes and put more money into the pockets of middle-class consumers. Our government has taken initiative to improve low-cost bank accounts and expand no-cost banking options for more than 7 million Canadians. We introduced the debit and credit card code of conduct. Sadly, the Liberals and the NDP have voted against all these measures. Mr. Speaker, we're here. We support Canadians.
The honourable member for Vancouver Centre.
Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General slammed this government for failing its responsibility to mitigate risks posed by the spread of antibiotic resistance in Canada, which the World Health Organization calls a major global threat to human health. While the Minister of Health, as usual, blamed the provinces, the AG blames her for shirking federal leadership. In 2009, this government cut funding for the Committee on Antibiotic Resistance. This pattern of callous mismanagement of public health and safety puts lives in danger. Will the minister stop blaming others and commit to lead a meeting with provinces on antibiotic misuse and
the Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, the member couldn't be more wrong. First of all, we're working right now with the World Health Organization to develop a global action plan. We're also working with the World Bank to study the economic impact of antimicrobial resistance. We actually have a national action plan on antimicrobial resistance, and we are encouraging the provinces, and I did when I sat down with them, and I continue to encourage them to work with us on our plan, and I hope after the AG's report they will be more open to that. We also have an education campaign, Mr. Speaker, that targets health professionals and the veterinary community. And for the first time in history, we got the human health side and the animal health side together to work on antimicrobial resistance.
Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General produced a damning report on the government's neglect for public safety with its prison policies. 1,500 inmates released cold turkey without reintegration programs and therefore at greater risk to reoffend. Cutting incentives for skill trainings leaves inmate on release without the skills to be gainfully employed. Holding low-risk offenders longer, adding $26 million to correction costs for no real gain. This issue is about public safety. Why is this government putting Canadians at risk?
The Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Of course, our Conservative government is committed to keeping Canadians safe. And that is why we're pleased with the Auditor General, who found that our truth in sentencing measures have worked because more prisoners are staying behind bars where they belong. So we're talking about ending the 2-for-1 credits. Most Canadians believe that someone who commits a serious crime, and we're talking serious crime, not light sentences, we're talking federal penitentiaries, serious crimes for 2 years or more, that they should actually, if they're going to do the serious crime, they should do the time, Mr. Speaker, and that member should get on board with that particular proposal. Thank you.
The honourable member for NDG Lachine. On Friday, a resident of Lachine informed me that a community mailbox was going to be installed right next to their childcare centre. All of the parents called Canada Post to express concern for their children's safety because they knew there would be a lot more cars and a lot more traffic. Canada Post isn't backing down. They don't see any problem. Does the minister see anything wrong with this picture? Does she understand that the changes go against the needs of the people? The Honourable Minister.
As I said before, Canada Post has delivered 1.4 billion fewer letters than it did in 2006, and as a result, they are converting the remaining one-third of houses to community mailboxes. In that process, Mr. Speaker, every single person affected by this change is sent a survey, asked to fill it in, asked what they want and what they don't want in terms of a community mailbox. That is taken back, taken into consideration, and there's a 90% satisfaction rate.
The honourable member for Chicoutimi-Le Yesterday, Canada Post announced that it would be closing the post office in North Chicoutimi. For months, the people of Chicoutimi have been clear about this. The closure of a profitable and popular post office is unacceptable. Over 2,500 people have contacted Canada Post, but Canada Post and this government would rather stick their heads in the sand. Their answer is disgusting. Will the minister finally listen to the people and reverse the decision to shut down this post office? The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Canada Post has indicated that to deal with the fact that they are no longer self-sufficient and are continuing to see their mail delivery erode, they have put together a 5-point plan. As a result, Mr. Speaker, one aspect of this is to ensure that consumers can actually receive their postal services at places at which they normally frequent, like a Shoppers Drug Mart, like another facility where they can do so. They are contracting out in order to ensure that there's best value for the Canadian dollar, for the Canadian taxpayer, and we are indeed supporting their plan.
The honourable member for Ancaster, Dundas, Flamborough West.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians well know this government's role in defending victims of crime and being appropriately tough on serious offenders. This is why I was proud last week when my bill, Fairness for Victims of Violent Offenders, and the Victims' Bill of Rights received royal assent. The NDP and Liberals have been clear that they don't support our agenda whatsoever. So when Bill Blair announced that he was to run for the Liberals, Canadians found this most bizarre. Can the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety please update this House on the measures the Conservative government has taken to crack down on crime?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank my honourable colleague for that question. Mr. Speaker, it's true. Our Conservative government has passed over 30 new measures to crack down on dangerous and violent criminals, including tough new prison sentences for drive-by shootings. Shockingly, but not surprisingly, the Liberal leader has said that he will repeal all mandatory minimum sentences in the entire criminal code. The Liberal leader should instead listen to his new candidate, Bill Blair, who said, and I quote, "When we have minimum sentences and we keep criminals in jail, and they're incapacitated, our streets are safer." End of quote. Mr. Speaker, there seems to be a little bit of conflict within the Liberal Party.
The honourable member for Random, Huron, St. George's.
Mr. Speaker, Steve and Natalie Wheeler from my riding are in Lukla, Nepal, and are trying to leave. Here is what they said. We have limited communication from the Canadian government on what to do. We try to keep them up to date with what little progress we've been trying to make in order to leave. And what do we get? An email from the government saying we have updated your file accordingly. Wow. We have received more support, communication, and reassurance from our insurance company. What can Steve and Natalie expect, and when can all Canadians outside the capital expect some real help?
Here, here. Honourable Minister of State.
Mr. Speaker, despite the challenges presented by terrain, weather, congestion of the airport, we are working hard, working around the clock. Our consular officials are working very hard. We have deployed additional consular staff. We have sent hundreds of emergency travel documents. And Canadian Consular Service Point has been established at the American Club, and I'm encouraging Canadians, please, to contact the Emergency Watch and Response Centre for further information.
Member for St. John's South Mount Cora.
Mr. Speaker, Marine Atlantic is a critical link between Newfoundland and mainland Canada, but for weeks now there's been an outstanding question of whether the budget would be gutted, as the main estimates indicated. The minister said to wait for the budget. But then there was no word, not a whisper, about Marine Atlantic in the 518 pages. Now Marine Atlantic is referring all questions to the minister's office. Mr. Speaker, will the minister finally stand in her place and tell Newfoundlanders and Labradorians what is happening with their ferry service?
Honourable Minister of Transport.
I can assure the people of Newfoundland and Labrador that Marine Atlantic will receive the funding it needs to continue to provide the frequency of service Atlantic Canadians are accustomed to.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Centre.
The NDP and the Liberals have actually insulted families with older children by saying that they don't have childcare costs. Of course, on this side of the House, we understand that's not true. Residents of Calgary Centre understand that's not true. All families with children, with older children, we're talking kids over 6 here, Mr. Speaker, have childcare costs and deserve our support. Can the Minister of State for Social Development please tell this House what our government is doing for families with older children?
The Honourable Minister of State for Social Development.
The member from Calgary Centre is correct. We do know that families who have older children do incur costs in raising those children. That's why we want to give them their money back and put it back in their pocket. Recently, I was in Newmarket, Ontario. I met with high school students and their parents. Those parents were thrilled about the expanded universal child care benefit. It will give them $720 for each one of their children that's in high school, which is a huge benefit for them. They're also thrilled that we've doubled the children's fitness tax credit, and we made it refundable because a lot of those kids are involved in sports activities. We're giving money back to parents, Mr. Speaker. They want to raise taxes.
The Honourable Member for Chambly-Bordua. While millions of fans of the Montreal Canadiens, and of course Calgary Flames fans too, anxiously await round 2 of the playoffs, along comes another blow to C-377, the Conservatives' blindly ideological anti-union bill. The Hockey Players Association says business deals involving video games, hockey cards, and international competitions could be in jeopardy. Does the government realize that its half-baked bill will adversely affect that part of our national economy that revolves around our national sport? Honourable Minister.
Believes that workers should have the right to know how their mandatory union dues are spent. This is something that Canadians have been asking for, and that's why we continue to support Bill C-377. It's a reasonable bill to increase transparency.
The Honourable Member for Richmond, Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, banks and fast food chains were rightly and unanimously condemned for abusing the temporary foreign worker program. Now the government's penalizing those who follow the rules. Already struggling with new EI rules, seasonal businesses like restaurants, hotels, food processing plants, and landscapers are in for a particularly rough ride. Will the Minister of Employment respect the Canada-Quebec Accord on immigration and suspend these measures long enough to negotiate with Quebec City, as the Quebec government, the Quebec Federation of Chambers of Commerce, and the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses have all requested? The Honourable Minister of Employment. Mr. Speaker, we believe that Canadians should get priority for Canadian jobs. That includes Quebecers. Quebecers should have priority on Quebec jobs. The data now shows that there are Quebecers available to fill vacancies. Employers should increase wages and try harder to recruit Quebecers. Mr. Speaker, we will always protect the jobs of Quebecers. That is why we made these reforms.
Tabling of documents, dépôt de documents. The honourable member for Ottawa Centre has a point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. During question period, the Parliamentary Secretary for the Prime Minister, I'm very glad that he was reading my householder, but he did say that in it that there was information about income splitting, which of course hasn't been passed by Parliament, is not in the document. So I give him the opportunity to actually clarify the record, because I don't put in things that are not accurate in the things that I put out to constituents, unlike the government that puts out advertising about things that actually haven't been passed in Parliament yet.
I see the Honourable Minister of Employment rising.
I am too. Rising on this point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Order. I thought the point of order was raised on the Minister of Employment for having quoted it. I'll go him first and then the Government House Leader. Order. The Honourable Minister of Employment.
Mr. Speaker, in fact, among the many Conservative tax cuts that the NDP member did highlight was income splitting. It is right here on page 12. Pension income splitting is a form of income splitting, and he did trumpet it as a positive policy. We agree with him. He was right. He's wrong now, though.
I know members aren't asking the Speaker to make decisions on terminology. The Honourable Member for Ottawa Centre is rising. It's very concerned. We're getting into an area of debate, and we are well past the end of question period. The Honourable Member for Ottawa Centre.
I respect my friend, of course, same city and all, but I actually was directing at the Parliamentary Secretary for the Prime Minister. He used to have the job. He no longer does, which is unfortunate, I guess. But the point was income splitting, period.
Okay.
Thank you.
The Honourable Government House Leader now, but then we very much need to move on.
I simply wanted to defend the member for Ottawa Centre.